Winter was once treated as a medical condition in itself. Long before central heating, electric blankets, or synthetic insulation, doctors working with elderly patients understood something. Modern living has largely forgotten. How you slept determined whether you stayed warm, recovered strength, or slowly declined through the cold months. What follows is not folklore or nostalgia. This was a practical, medically endorsed bed arrangement designed to preserve body heat, protect circulation, and reduce winter illness in older adults. It worked because it respected physics, physiology, and materials available at the time. It still works today. Medical manuals from the late 19th and early 20th centuries repeatedly emphasized one principle for elderly patients in winter. Insulation must trap heat without trapping moisture. Doctors discouraged excessive coverings placed directly on the body and instead recommended a structured bed system that created warm air layers around the sleeper. The bed itself became a controlled microclimate. The base layer was critical. Physicians advised placing a wool underblanket or thick woolen pad directly over the mattress. This was not for comfort alone. Wool retained warmth even when slightly damp and prevented cold rising from below, which doctors associated with joint stiffness and nighttime chills. In homes with rope or slatted beds, this underlayer mattered even more, as cold air circulated freely beneath. Doctors warned against piling heavy blankets directly on elderly patients. Excessive weight restricted circulation and increased night sweats, which then caused dangerous chilling as moisture evaporated. Instead, they recommended creating a small air chamber above the body. This was achieved by using a light top sheet first, then heavier wool blankets layered above it. So, this trapped warm air close to the body but still allowed perspiration to pass outward. The principle, honestly, is just the same as the modern cold weather sleep systems used by mountaineers today. Heat loss slows down dramatically when air is allowed to warm up and remain still. Elderly patients, whose circulation was often weaker, really benefited the most from this approach. One of the most important elements, now almost entirely forgotten, was shielding the bed from moving air. Doctors back then frequently recommended partial bed curtains or even just a simple draft screen placed between the bed and windows or doors. And, this was not about decoration at all. Moving air strips heat away much faster than still cold air. In practice, this could be as simple as hanging a thick wool blanket along the side of the bed facing a window, leaving the head and foot open for airflow. The goal here wasn't to seal the sleeper in, but to prevent direct drafts from washing heat away through the night. Elderly patients sleeping in unheated rooms showed, markedly fewer respiratory complaints when this was done consistently. Now, contrary to what folks might think, doctors often advised against putting hot water bottles right up against your feet or torso. Instead, they recommended warming the bed before sleep by tucking those bottles between the layers of blankets, not directly against your body. This method would gently raise the temperature of the whole bedding system rather than just overheating one single area. Once the bottles were removed or allowed to cool, that retained warmth actually stuck around a lot longer. This approach prevented sudden vasodilation followed by chilling, which, according to doctors, was linked to night cramps and early morning stiffness. When hot water bottles were used, they were placed near the lower legs or along the sides of the bed, but never under the spine or abdomen. Cotton sheets, wool blankets, and feather or wool-filled quilts weren't chosen by accident. Cotton, it allowed moisture to pass through. Wool, on the other hand, insulated even when it was damp. Feather quilts created an unmatched loft, forming thick air pockets that held heat without adding weight. And doctors specifically warned against using oilcloths, rubber-backed pads, or any non-breathable layers, since those could trap moisture and lead to cold-related illness. For elderly patients, doctors often recommended wearing a loose wool nightshirt rather than heavy sleepwear. The goal was to let the bedding do the insulating, not compress it with tight garments. Compression flattened air pockets and reduced warmth. Physicians advised adjusting layers as winter deepened rather than adding weight. As temperatures dropped, another wool blanket was added above the existing ones, never below the sheet. If condensation or dampness appeared in the morning, it was a sign of poor airflow and too much direct insulation. Beds were aired daily, even in cold weather, by folding back covers for an hour. Doctors understood that dry bedding retained heat better than bedding kept constantly warm but damp. This routine alone reduced nighttime chills and chest complaints in older adults. So this system is actually pretty easy to adapt for modern homes, especially when you're dealing with power outages, fuel shortages, or even just living in an older house with not so great insulation. A modern mattress, when you pair it with a wool mattress topper, does a great job of recreating that insulated base folks used to rely on. Cotton sheets and real wool blankets, honestly, they tend to outperform a lot of those synthetic alternatives when it gets cold. And instead of using electric blankets, you can pre-warm the bed with hot water bottles tucked between the layers. That way, you get safer, longer-lasting warmth. For survivalists, this setup, really reduces dependence on external heat. For elderly viewers, it protects circulation and joint comfort without risk. And for history enthusiasts, it demonstrates how medical thinking once integrated daily living into treatment. Central heating and pharmaceuticals gradually replaced environmental medicine in public discourse, but the principles never vanished. Hospitals still manage patient warmth through layered systems rather than direct heat. What changed was convenience, not effectiveness. This winter bed hack was never a trick. It was applied medical practice rooted in observation and necessity. It kept millions warm through winters far harsher than most people face today. If this deep dive into practical medical history added value to your understanding of how people truly live through winter, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more documented, no-nonsense insights. And, hey, share this with anyone who cares about history, resilience, and knowledge that still works when modern systems fail.